But what I want you to walk away with from today regarding time management is that time management can get out of control very quickly if you let time manage you. It is your responsibility to manage time. What we talk about, some of the examples might be manager related, might be whether you're on the phones, maybe whether you're out talking to somebody and setting up your personal life. Regardless of your role, regardless of your title, regardless of your position, time management and organization is critical to anybody's success. One of the biggest pitfalls that comes with time management is lack of follow-up. If you do nothing right except follow-up, you'll be far ahead of the game. It consistently comes out in focus groups that lack of follow-up is a huge issue when it comes to time management and organization. And don't kid yourself of separating your personal and your professional. They're going to bleed into each other. It doesn't mean they're definitely connected, it just means they will start to bleed into each other. If you take 5 or 10 minutes, a little bit longer at work, it's going to take 5 or 10 minutes longer for you to get home to hit that personal stuff, and vice versa. You have kicking and screaming children at home, and you're running late, and you're running hairy, all of a sudden you're going to show up on the doorstep here, most likely a little bit rushed in here. They're going to bleed into each other. The key is to learn how to control it and do something about it. So let's start with an exercise. Just throw out any examples of things that are taking up your time. What are the most common time wasters for you at home and at work? And let's make sure we touch upon these today.
Chores.
Chores.
Driving to work.
Driving to work, okay.
Kid errands.
Kids, errands. Okay. Anything else?
Not a waste of time, but school takes up a significant part of our life.
If you're taking classes outside, it's going to take up your time. I have outside interests, Kenny, and those outside interests take up my time. If I don't account for those correctly, it will bleed in here. And we're going to talk about how some of that connects when we go through this. Whatever I talk about today goes completely out the window when you talk about people. We're going to talk about calendars, time management, organization, and all of that goes completely out the window if there's a person involved, if there's a people issue. And the reason I tell you this is I was standing when I was overseeing multiple teams, and I was running out the door to go to a meeting, walking out the door actually, I wasn't in that big of a hurry. And someone came up and said, Tom, I need to talk to you, I've got an issue. And I said, I've got this meeting I've got to be at. I'll catch up with you after. And the look on their face said, I need you. And I said, we can talk after my meeting. I never saw the person again. They ended up having some issues. And they needed some attention. And they never worked here again. And I think I could have gotten them the right support if I had the right conversation, but I didn't have that conversation. And from that moment forward, I vowed to never let time manage me. And people should never override what you have going on. Now, there are ways to control it. Because what might be important or urgent to you may not be important or urgent to others. And you are responsible to get that clarity. Just because someone says it's urgent doesn't mean it's urgent. Just because someone said it's a low priority doesn't mean it's not a high priority. It depends who you're talking to, and you have to give it the appropriate context. So you have to think of it that way, and so you have to establish a right relationship of whoever gives you the task, or if you've initiated one, the people involved in the task, they know exactly what it is, why it's urgent, why it's important, how you can go about doing it, what you can do to delegate. So it's important that you realize when people are involved that you have to also establish relationship. Relationship building is critical to time management. But you can also control some of that. And you can control some of that as, let's say you're overseeing a team or a project or whatever it might be. And you find you're consistently getting the same questions over and over. Well, you can sit there with a line at your door answering the same question over and over and over, but that's your time being wasted. Is there a smarter way to do it? What you might want to do is put together frequently asked questions. Always a great tool. Or gather the group together. Maybe there's a new initiative going out out there. So maybe what you want to do is anticipate some of the questions that might come your way. Maybe every time we acquire a company and get brand new programs, there's a list of questions that go along with it. Anticipate those questions, learn from the past, and put those out there. By learning from the past and anticipating the questions, you're eliminating future questions and actually leading the people to water. And now they're more accountable, but more importantly, more empowered. Take those same things, not only questions, but concerns. What are the same concerns that are out there? Why are people continually bringing the concerns that are out there? Pull the group together. Pull your questions together. Hold team meetings. Possibly even set up routines. I just finished a one-on-one with my manager. Every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, from 12 to 12:30, I have a meeting with my manager. I keep my list of questions rolling. Unless it's urgent, I don't need to send her these one-off questions constantly through email or phone calls, because each one of those takes up time. But if I can consolidate them all together, we just had a half-hour conversation that lasted 14 minutes. I said, here are all my questions, here are all my concerns, here are all the things I'm working on. Do you have anything for me? A very productive phone call, but it could have been unproductive if I had sent every one of those questions to her throughout the past week. Urgent, whole different ball game. Had a couple issues this week, we talked. Trust me, we talked. Your use of the calendar as a tool is critical to your success. And I'm going to ask you to build in time for the unexpected. How do you build in fire drills in the unexpected onto your calendar? How? 1:30 today, there's going to be a fire drill. Somebody's going to come to me with a problem. How do you do that?
Give yourself some wiggle room.
Give yourself plenty of wiggle room. And so in an 8-hour day, if I build my 8 hours, and I schedule every minute of those 8 hours, I will promise you, you will fail. Because everything that's scheduled, something will go awry. So you have to build in blocks of time. Speaker Magazine will tell you that 28% of your day will be interruptions. More than 2 hours of your day will be interruptions. So let's start off with your 8-hour day and build in a block of 2 hours if you're not going to get anything done that you think is important. We're a very reactive workplace these days. And I'm talking culturally, I'm not talking just the company. Is that we get emails and then we jump. Someone tells us what to do and then we go. And these emails tell us what we need to do. It's like waiting for the next instruction. But that's reality. But that's okay. But you have control of it. So you want to build in some wiggle room. So if you're going to have a conversation with someone and you're going to say it's going to take 30 minutes, schedule it for an hour. Because of interrupted time. What happens if it's less than an hour? Sing hallelujah and get some time back. Did you realize every time you're interrupted, it takes 7 times the amount of the original time it took you to get that original thought for you to get it back? And that interruption is not someone just knocking on your door saying, "Are you there?" It's a phone ring. It's an email that you just caught with the corner of your eye in the middle of a phone call and you were multitasking. You have to reduce your interruptions or account for them. And it's going to take a little bit of both for you to be successful. You need to schedule time away from your desk. Schedule your lunches. Schedule time. I had it on when I was managing multiple teams on the floor. 4 times a day it said, get up and walk the floor. It literally said, walk the floor. And it would pop up right in my face and say, gotta do it. It refreshed me mentally. It built a relationship with the people I was walking the floor with. And when I sat back down, I came back much more productive because. But if I didn't remind myself to do it, I might have done it a couple times. I have to force myself to do it. And you build that time away. Every day, for the most part, I schedule an hour to go over to the Y and work out. We say we don't have time. you make the time for it. Don't let your calendar control you. I do more with that hour built in than I would without it because I am much more productive when I get back. Doesn't mean everyone has to go out and work out. It just means get up, schedule the time, and account for it. Are you accounting your bio breaks? Are you accounting the time for water? Are you accounting for the time where you're running into somebody in the hall and they chat your ear off? If you're not accounting for it, it's not going to happen. A meeting from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and you have an immediate meeting at 10 a.m. right after that down the hall. If your meeting ends at 10, did you account for the walk time? Or, as you're wrapping up, we may say, I'm going to need a few minutes to walk over there, and you can wrap up one and get there. You've got to be able to account for all of your time, and a lot of times we don't. Have you accounted for time to do your work? To return your emails? To get in touch with someone? To return phone calls as you need to deal with a customer situation? Have you accounted for it? Or is it sitting in a pile where I'm going to get to it when I can find the time to get to it? When those situations come in, you should have a routine. Routines are critical to your success. If I have a routine every time I walk in the door at 8 to 8:30 or 8 to 9, I'm going to go through all my emails, I know it's going to be there. And maybe that can be my block of time where I'm blocking it. That's a flexible time. So you block the amount of time. You don't necessarily have to block the exact time. So let's say you have a team and you need to do 100 listenings in a month. 20 business days in a month says you have to do 5 a day. I'll block an hour maybe to do the 5. Maybe I'll block an hour and a half, whatever. Let's call it an hour for that. If I don't do that hour today, where does it go?
Tomorrow.
How many hours do I have to do tomorrow?
2.
What happens if I miss that day? It turns into 4. When do we always get our stuff done?
End of the month.
Right at the deadline. I have a project that's due next week. I have a presentation on Tuesday. Would you have accounted for the bank holiday on Monday? Yeah. That presentation is into my manager. I'm not telling you this to say, hey, look at me, I'm really good. I'm telling you this because I worked on it a little bit at a time for the last several weeks. And I'll turn it in tomorrow. And that's the point of it's already done, but I'm putting the same pressure on myself yesterday. I spent an hour on it to finalize it. And that same pressure I'm putting on myself to get it done for that hour is the same pressure would be on me the day it's due. It's the same pressure, different day, different time. So why not put that pressure on a little earlier? So when you are done with it, you can kind of coast, or if something does come up, you can now account for that fire drill that's out. You want to use your calendar to reserve this time and let it be flexible. But there should also be, I call it, what is the least amount of work that you can do in a day and consider yourself successful? Let me repeat that. What is the least amount of work that you can do in a day and consider yourself successful? What we do is we come up with this list that's this long. And then we get this much done. And then we push all of this stuff to other days. Well, push that stuff to other days now and build it in for the next day, the next week, the next month, and spread it out. So now I'm only working with this. So instead of pushing it, now when I'm done with my stuff, I pull it. And do you see the difference? It's a little less pressure on you when you're pulling it into your day because you have a little bit of extra time versus pushing it out, saying, where am I going to find the time tomorrow? You're going to find the time tomorrow because at 4:55, when you walk out of here today, you're going to put it on your calendar every single day. 4:55, look at tomorrow's calendar. There are very few things I promise in life, but I will promise you, you will sleep at it because you already know what's on your calendar for tomorrow.
Amen.
4:55 every single day. 4:55 on Fridays, it says, look at next week. And then at the end of every month, it says, look at the whole month as a whole. Look at the month as a whole. But is that on the 30th of every month? When is it? Maybe the 25th, 26th. You have certain things that you have to do every single day. You have some things that you have to do every single week, and you have things that have to be done every single month. You know where they are, so build them out. And if you do that, you will sleep better because you know exactly what's coming down the pipe every single day, every single week, every single month. Will it change? Yep. But when it comes to, I come in today and there's a fire drill brewing, guess what? I know exactly which ones I'm going to move and where I'm going to move them to. That's the difference. It doesn't become a scramble anymore. It becomes a very calculated change of what I'm doing. Another thing I'll tell you, and you're going to laugh because you're going to think it has nothing to do with time management. Keep a pad of paper and a pen at your nightstand at night. How many times have you awakened in the middle of the night saying, I've got to remember that. And then for the next several hours you're saying, got to remember that, got to remember that, got to remember that, got to remember that. Write it down on a piece of paper, legibly. Go back to sleep. Very few promises I made. You will sleep better. And what's interesting is not only will you sleep better, you will know exactly what you have coming up. You won't forget it. And will actually be more creative in thought. Because your mind's, your subconscious mind is doing some things that you don't believe that it can ever do. And your ideas become fresh. Most of my ideas, my aha moments of life have come from me writing it down on a notepad. And I go back to sleep. Isn't that beautiful? Your work's being done while you're sleeping. One of the things you also have to do when it comes to time management. Well, I'll stop here. What questions do you have about building in the unexpected?
Well, I wanted to find out if having used multiple methods to get to where you find a system that works for you now, do you go with one planner or multiple planners or a digital planner, or do you sync things? What works most efficiently?
Whatever works best for you. The question was, how do you, there are so many different methods of organizing. Whatever works best for you. The key is to be consistent. My method is if I'm in the middle of a meeting, I keep copious notes and I use symbols, color coding. Colored yellow means gotta get it done today. Little asterisk means I have to put it into my to-do list, my tar list. So I keep a list, a task list that I sync with my calendar. I use Microsoft Outlook. Microsoft Outlook is my key tool of choice. And so I use it an awful lot. We'll talk about how to use it effectively, but I also use notes, and I also actually make a copy of that. So when I walk away, it's with me. And so I have little symbols that I use on what's a meeting versus what's a follow-up item, and we'll talk about the follow-up items in just a moment. But I have now synced it in my head of what needs to do. When I write a note, I know exactly where it's going, how it's going to be synced into my Outlook, and how it's going to be synced into my other planners that I have. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Your managers aren't going to want to hear this. Be realistic. All of us want to be the go-getters. All of us want to say, you tell me you want it now, 5 o'clock on Tuesday, you're going to get it at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, and then 4:55 rolls around on Tuesday, and it's not ready. Because we just said it without thinking. When someone gives you a task, you have the right obligation to think about realistically where it fits in the overall scheme of things. That's where you have the opportunity to build that relationship with your manager and have a conversation of saying, what if it doesn't get done? What if I miss this deadline? What happens when? When's the last time you asked those questions? Because if you don't ask those questions, you're only making assumptions. And I think that's very important when you're having these conversations, when it comes to these conversations of, You tell me you want it at 5 o'clock now? Okay, something's got to give. Here's my plate. Let me tell you what's on it. Let me tell you what I have to push. Or, what are some things that I can scrunch? That's if you confirm that it really is important or it really is urgent. But if you start asking the right questions and find out, I tell you passing in the hall, can you get it done by 5? Great. I've had people where I've handed it, put it on their desk at 5 o'clock on Tuesday exactly when they asked for it, and they said, what's this? I said, you asked for this. And they said, oh. And didn't even remember asking. So you should make sure you ask the right questions. So you get it, so you're aligned with everybody when it comes to requests that are being made. But one of the things that you can do to help is, are you accounting for everything? Because as soon as I put that task in your head, it becomes fresh in your mind of the task, and that's all I think about. Go back and figure out what's on your plate for the day, the week, and the month, and figure out where would it fit. Wouldn't it be a little bit nicer to under-promise and over-deliver and say, Tuesday at 5 o'clock is going to be tight, Thursday at 5 o'clock, guaranteed. And then when you hand it in on Wednesday, you'll be in good shape. You're building in extra fire drill time. You're building in interruption time. You're accounting for things that you can't predict are going to go on in your life, in the workplace. Be realistic about it. Account for everything. Account for those casual conversations, the walks down the hall, the water cooler. It will be covered if you double the amount of time that it takes to meet with someone. I love the half-hour meetings that last 15 minutes. And you'll find that once you start to figure out, when I have a routine set up, when I manage people, we used to meet and it used to take 2 hours, and then we would cut those meetings down to an hour. So after a while, I always gain time back, and then you can say realistically, okay, an hour is good. So you start by doubling it, and then you can cut it down as you start to figure out what is realistic. But let's come to that back to the point on follow-up. Lack of follow-up. Go to any focus group and say, what's the biggest frustration of people every time they ask someone to do something and it doesn't get done? Oh, how frustrating is that? So if you are the asker and someone says, and you say to somebody, I need to have this done by Friday at 5 o'clock, what's the first thing you should do as the asker?
How urgent is it?
Okay. Explain to them how it's urgent, why it's urgent. Good. What else? Okay. Figure out what's sitting on their plate. Is that realistic for you? Good. When it comes to your calendar, what should you do on your calendar? Put a reminder right on your calendar. Follow up with Johnny. Now, I can put the follow up with Johnny at 5 o'clock on Friday. But when I call at 5 o'clock on Friday and it's not here, it's pretty obvious. What I might want to do is just put the due date, and it depends on where you are in the relationship with that person. If you're trying to give them leadership responsibilities and you're trying to build that trust with them, maybe you just give them the space and let them run with it, and it'll come in if you set the appropriate expectation. Maybe you're trying to develop them and teach them along the way, and that's the situation you're in with this task. What you might want to do is put a follow-up item a day or two before and just get a status update. Is there anything I can do to help you out? Can I support you? And it's just follow-up. It's not, are you going to get it to me by Friday at 5 o'clock? That's not the conversation. The conversation is do you have everything you need to get it done? Is there anything I can do? Can I get some roadblocks out of the way for you? Do you see how all that fits in? But if somebody asks me and says, hey, I need something from you by Friday, 5 o'clock, it might go on my calendar at Friday, 5 o'clock, but it's not the only calendar appointment that's in it. The other ones is, when am I going to get it done? When am I going to actually work on it? And so I have to figure out where I'm going to put that block of time, figure out how long it's going to take me, and then do it. So I'm going to have it 2 or 3 times. I might break it down into pockets and break it down for a few days prior to the deadline. And each one of those reminds me of when that's due, 5 o'clock Friday. But what's interesting is a lot of us go into that day and block off some time and say, I'm going to spend 4 hours and I'm going to get this thing done. Studies have shown that if it takes you 4 hours to do it and you're investing all of your time and concentration into that one block of time, non-productive work. You want to spread it out. You want to refresh yourself. There's actually been some studies done. We say, hey, don't play on the internet while at work. If you read an article, it takes you 3, 4, 5 minutes to read it, and then you come back, you're going to be more productive. Believe it or not. It may not necessarily be the internet, but break that mindset that you're in right now where your wheels might be spinning. Don't have huge pockets of time where your concentration is being taxed on a regular basis. Spread it out. There are some things that you can do to schedule the deadlines. You want these reminders to come up. And now I'm going to contradict myself and tell you, hey, you want to avoid all the reminders or the interruptions, but I'm going to tell you, if you're using an online calendar and have these reminders pop up, aren't you being interrupted? Yep. But if you do it long enough, and you know every day you're going into tomorrow, every week you're going into next week, I predict when these things are coming up anyway, so when it usually comes up, I'm hoping the work's already been done. Or when it pops up, I'm committing to a start and an end time. And that's going to help you to become more productive when you can commit to your start and your end time. How many of you have sat in on a meeting and it's creeping up to the top of the hour when the meeting's over and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon? And you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 minutes past your time. You're pushing 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes into somebody else's time. It's only going to creep in. It's only going to cause further pushing of other items, and things get caught up. So I make it very clear to people I'm meeting with, it's always a hard stop. Unless I have opening on the calendar, and then we can go through it. But if I'm creeping up on the time and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon, it's like, when can we schedule the next meeting? We have everybody on the call, and it saves you time. Or it gets the yappers to kind of wrap it up real quick and get to a decision. You find that happens more often than not. It's not about making a quick decision, it's about making a productive decision. And how many times have you sat on a call and it just would never end? You've accomplished everything you want to do 20 minutes before the meeting ends, and you start talking about puppies and kittens and kids and stuff. The building of a relationship is extremely important to a working relationship. But when you find that someone just doesn't know how to end the meeting, you're cutting into everyone's time. Wouldn't it be phenomenal every time a meeting's over, there is a little bit of chit-chat, and you say, well, we appreciate you guys jumping on. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Doing it. There's been many times I was not the host and I've been to the meeting. This has been fantastic, everyone. Have a great day. And I mean it. Really have a great day. But I get time back on my calendar. If you're giving me back my time, I'm going to take it. You want to do it the right way. Relationships are extremely important. There is a time and a place, and there's been some times where I just need the head to be jello for those 15 minutes. I'll sit and chat with someone. But if you can really use the time back, take control of the meeting. When it comes to meetings, when's the last time you ever asked, is there a value add to this? I just started a new job a month and a half ago. So I picked up a bunch of routines the person before me had. I canceled 2 of them. And the other ones, the first thing I said is, I didn't even say my name. Hi, this is Tom Dowd. I said, I want to put out to you, anytime if you feel that this meeting is of no value to you and you just stop coming to it or want to stop coming to it, you need to let me know. I'll work on either the agenda items, making this a more productive meeting, or just completely canceling it. Because all of our time is precious. Be strong enough to question it. You may not want to do it in the middle of a meeting that has 300 people on it. And ask yourself, how productive is a meeting with 300 people on it, which I've sat in on. If you're not a key participant in that meeting, ask yourself why you're on it. Is it a nice to know, or is it a need to know? Be strong enough after the meeting, before the next meeting, to talk to somebody and say, hey, I've got some ideas to make this more productive, or hey, Have you asked enough of the participants if they think there's value add? That will save you time. Yes?
Just the point prior in regards to, ending the meeting promptly, because let's say you have something coming right up. So you usually just set the expectation at the beginning, or if you've talked to the person prior to the meeting, like, hey, I just want to let you know this is something that, once 2 o'clock hits, I really need to move on, just to kind of set the expectation.
It depends. If you have a certain meeting that has a history of going over, you may want to do that. There's been many times where I said I have a hard stop, and I say it right up front. You don't want to set a bad tone to the meeting.
Sure.
But you do, if you have a history of it happening, you may want to do it. Well, what's interesting is, let's talk about the beginning of the meeting. Right. We give more respect to the people who are late to the meeting. I'm sorry, we're not ready to start yet because our key participant, Johnny's not on yet. So we're just going to sit around and wait for Johnny, and we're going to chit-chat for a while and not be productive with our time, or we're going to start to multitask, which leads into multitasking for the rest of the meeting, until Johnny gets on. Yeah, I know it's still about 7 of, but, oh wait, here's Johnny. Okay, now let's start the meeting. So all of you, none of you were important until Johnny got here, is what you really just said. And there's been several times where I just started the meeting. We'll catch Johnny up late. Maybe I'll give Johnny a very brief Reader's Digest version of what I just accomplished in 30 seconds or less, and if they have more time, then so be it. But we give an awful lot of respect for people that are late. And what's important is, remember, I'm now tying in time management with relationship building and communication. And so when it comes to communication, clarity, avoiding confusion. So when you send an email, for example, be very clear on what your expectations are right in the header for your information only. No action needed. Action needed. So if you're the sender, make sure that you are putting it in your header that maybe you need some action needed on it. Now, don't get to a point where everything is action needed and you just have to read it. I'll look at it and say, there was no action needed on it. So don't cry wolf. But if there is action on it, put the action in when it's due. You'll get many more responses because of it. And people will be so much more respectful of their emails they receive from you, and they'll start to read it. Because if you tell them it's an FYI only, they'll still read it. Because they know exactly what they're getting from it. If you're the recipient of it, however, read the whole thing. If there's an attachment on it, open up the attachment. But not just open up the attachment, is actually read the email. Why am I telling you this?
Do you know if I explain why you're even getting the attachment in the first place?
Mm-hmm. There might be a spreadsheet that's this big, and they may say, I want to put your eyes here. So it saves you time from figuring out, why am I looking at this? Because a good email, well written, will tell you exactly what you need to be looking at. So don't just look at the attachment, don't avoid the attachment. You have to tie the two together. It will actually save you time. But how many times have you seen these emails and you say, I'm just going to read it real quick and then delete. And it didn't say action needed, but not everybody plays by those same rules. Read the whole thing. If you're getting to a point where you're just tired of reading someone's email, do not set up auto-delete. Just get yourself off the distribution list. I mean, there's distribution lists that are this big, and sometimes it's hard to avoid. But maybe what you might want to do is, if it's a report, you only need to look at it once a week versus once a day, put a reminder that pops up that says, look at the report. And then maybe you auto-delete it, and then you pluck it out of your deletes once a week. Something that doesn't have to catch your attention. But what's interesting is read the whole thing. If you're getting to a point where you're thinking about auto-deleting, is have that conversation with the person, just as you would with a meeting. Are these emails value add? Get off of things that aren't. I've had so many people say, oh yeah, I just stayed on the distribution list from the last 3 jobs I've had. It's a waste of your time. That's the difference between nice to have versus have to have. Because one of the common mistakes is, you don't have to keep everything. You just need to know who to go to and where to go to. First thing I bring up every single morning, 7:30, it pops up and it says bring up your action list. Within my action list is a list of contacts. And within that list of contacts is also a tab relating to acronyms. And this thing just stays up all day, and I update the acronyms because I'm just thrown by them. There's millions of them out there. And then you have contacts, and names change, and people and the go-to people change. If I keep that up to date, I'm horrendous in remembering people's names. But I do know if I need something from this relating to this topic, I'm going to this person, of course I'm going to have this thing up. It's the first thing I bring up every morning. It's the last thing I shut down every day. Know who to go to, so you don't necessarily have to keep everything that's out there. Because when you get an email, you have to touch it once. You're only allowed to touch your emails once. So if I'm in the middle of a meeting, I'm on a phone call like this, and out of the corner of my eyes, this little preview of an email, everyone see it in the bottom right-hand corner? You know you can turn that off. So if you find yourself battling because you see it, and you say, ooh, email. You ever seen the movie Squirt? And that's really what it is. Because you're in the middle of an important meeting, and the squirrel over here gets your attention, and all of a sudden now you're off reading this email. And you're only half reading it because you're also half listening. Studies have proven multitasking only takes away from both and does not make you more productive. It actually takes you longer. The amount of time to concentrate, laser focus on this, and then laser focus on this combined is a lot less than doing both together. Yes, we have to multitask sometimes. Do what you can to avoid it. And one of those things is either lock your system so you can't see it, turn off the preview if you don't have it, but if you're already scheduling time to get through your emails, it shouldn't matter. Because I also set an expectation with people I work with that I will never send you an urgent email that has to be done today. If I do, I will contact you other ways, through email, through instant messenger or whatever, or a phone call. I will let you know if something urgent is sitting on your inbox, because no one can expect in the hundreds of emails we get throughout a week that you'll pick up on that instantly. I think that's just bad business if you try to set the expectations that way. So be realistic about the timelines that are out there, but touch it once. So my options are, don't read it at all and get to it when I can. But if it does catch my eye, and I do look at it, I can do one of a few things. One, I can read it in its entirety. And reading it in its entirety will actually make you a smarter person. You will also know exactly what they're asking for. Instead of sending the quick reply back that says, hey, here's what you wanted, and they send it back to you and they say, yeah, did you get to the bottom and see my other request? That's called rework. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. Read the whole thing, save yourself the time, and just be productive the first go around. You become smarter. There was an article, I think it was in Forbes, where they talked to this investor. And they said, how did you become so successful and so rich? And he said, I read the prospectus. I read my emails. His theory was that 90% go unread or not read in their entirety. He read every single detail. He became smarter. He got an advantage over the people he worked with and for. So I tried it. He's right. I became better for it because I became less rushed, and I looked at it as invested time. And that invested time made me a subject matter expert in some things, which means I didn't have to go looking for people or looking for answers. It was all there. Not all, but a lot of it was there. That's time it takes to do that. So we'll stop here. What questions or comments do you have so far?
I just had a question for you. So you must be reevaluating really the amount of time you're assessing for things on either a daily basis or a weekly basis without maybe you not realizing it, but typically how often are you assessing, I guess is my question, the time frame that you're giving yourself for these built-in activities, I guess?
Constant. It is a constant exercise, but if you think about it, if every day I'm looking at my calendar for tomorrow, every week I'm looking at it, every month, those assessments start to become actions. And so I might say, I mean, the first meeting I had, I said, is this going to be a typical meeting that we have? It was a weekly routine. And they said, yeah, this is pretty typical. I said, then we don't need the full hour, We can make it into a half hour or make it every other week. So we made it every other week. And even that, after the first couple, turned it into their 20-minute meetings. So I'm going to take and turn them into 30 minutes. I'm going to give it another week or another session or two to figure that out. But I will cut it down. But give yourself enough time to cut it down versus expand it out, and you'll be much better off for it. So let's come back to the touch it once. So I have to read the whole thing through. And then I can delete it. Or save it to wherever it needs to go. Or if I look at it and say, ooh, I don't have the time to get to this now, I'm going to take a calendar appointment on a day that I can work on it. And I'm going to actually attach the email. You know how to do that? Okay. You can go in, there's attachment, it's a little paper clip in the upper left-hand corner, and you have two options to attach. The first option on the left is a file. And you can attach a file, like an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, and you go into your files and you pluck it out and you save it. Or you can go into the option on the right and attach your email, and you can pull it from your sent, your deleted, your drafts, anywhere, and pluck it off, and then it just sits there. So when I have an email I have to go in and work off of, I just go ahead and save it. I also use my calendar for follow-up items. So when I have a routine with you, and I meet with you every Tuesday, with my manager, every Wednesday, I have a follow-up with my manager. And it sits right along with the meeting, and I have attachments of the things I want to talk to her about. And after the meeting's over, I move it to the next week. And so I always know when I have a follow-up with my manager, I'm going to throw it in to this follow-up item. I have pretty much a follow-up folder or email or calendar appointment for just about every one of my critical meetings that I'm the owner of or have constant questions. So things that come in through email, like, oh yeah, we need to talk about this in the next meeting, I'm just going to put it right in that follow-up next to that meeting.
So that's like another appointment that's like right next
It's right next to it. I call them, it's going to be inappropriate, but I call them my FUs. They're my follow-ups. And I have these FUs next to everything, like follow-up with Johnny, follow-up with this meeting, follow-up with this routine. And they're there. And so I know exactly where they are and how to get to them. And so I can do a search on them if I have to find them or if I can't do it. But again, touch it once is you either read it, right then and there, and delete it. You read it and figure out some work has to be done on it. And you move it to the right place, or you just delete it. I mean, there are very few options, but what happens is we go in and we read it, and then what do? We leave it. My old manager had 1,000 emails in his inbox. I know because I was his business support manager. That didn't last very long. I got him down to under 100. Not by just going delete, 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 but I put them in the right folders. They became organized, and we started to figure out where things needed to go. It was important that we had that conversation because every time you have 400 emails, you're trying to sift through to get to find that one is wasted time. Does that make sense? Checklists. How many of you keep a checklist? How many of you are not admitting to keeping a checklist? I keep one. But what's important about a checklist is that you understand what those red flags are when they come to a checklist. If you have a list of items and they are top to bottom and it is first come, first serve, you might want to think about how you manage your checklist. First in, first out, or it just keeps piling on the top, so the things on top become your flavor of the day, and your flavor of the day pushes everything down, and all of a sudden you have these things that down here that might be important and urgent, but you never saw after a while. Or you keep sifting through your own checklist. If you find yourself pushing and not pulling, you might want to reevaluate your checklist. You might even want to push and a pull version. Your push and your pull says, here's the least amount of work I can do today, and if it is scheduled for today, it will get done today. I might have another checklist that says, hey, here are the things I can pull from as needed. But on that checklist, what you might want to do is have it prioritized. Maybe 1 through 3. Maybe color-coded. What's important, what's urgent, what has to get done. if you are going to keep a full checklist. But again, don't shift those things time and time again. And I would also highly recommend that you put your due date on. Ongoing doesn't count. Miscellaneous doesn't count. Put a date and a time of when you want to get it done. Hold yourself accountable and put goals next to it. When you do that, it will get done. And if you're on top of your every day, every week, every month, you can keep a checklist because you know exactly what's going to happen. There's a few times where I just can't keep up with the things and all of a sudden I just pull out the notebook and start writing them. I'll get back to it. Because I know when I sit down and reevaluate tomorrow, next week, or the next month, I'm going to take this list, take my symbols, and figure out what I need to do and actually assign them time of when I'm going to get to it. What is the least amount of work you can get done and still consider it a successful day? I call this the I can't leave list. Because really, that's what it is. Not a nice to have. This is I have to do this. So maybe if you're listening to somebody and you have to get those 5 listings done and you're looking at your schedule for the rest of the week and you're saying, or I've got vacation coming up, I have to get these listings done. Get the listings done. Double the extended time, build in the interruptions. It will help you. Use routines. With the routines, if you reduce the unpredictability, and you're creating, now think about it, if you have this creative time and everyone knows we're going to consolidate ourselves on a Tuesday and get together, I can withhold all of my questions. It saves everybody a ton of time. It also allows you to divide and conquer. We have these project groups, and what do? We travel in packs. We all go to the same meeting. Well, that might be nice for an update. It might be nice for a working session, but it's not nice if everyone shows up to do the presentation, put it together. Someone does a speaking note. Someone does this. If you're all doing it together, that's all collective time. That's funneled in. Divide and conquer. And then come back for the updates. Can you tell me where you stand on putting together the presentation? Can you tell me where you are with your speaking notes? You were doing some follow-up with Johnny. Tell me what your action item is from Johnny. Were you able to get that answer? So now everyone knows we're going to get those answers in a consolidated place. It's not bad. Routines can save you a ton of time when you do it. So I'm going to give you an exercise. Write down the 3 most time-consuming activities in your day, personal or professional, doesn't matter. While you're doing this, I'll talk to you about time studies. I've been through more time studies than you can shake a stick at. Well, how long does it take managers to do their paperwork, to do their administration, to do their timesheets, to do blah, 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 blah? It takes me as long as it takes me to do it. It takes you as long as, however long it's going to take you to do it. Time studies are the biggest waste of time because they're so individual. They're such a waste of time. But the reason I'm telling you this is go back and evaluate yourself. So now take these 3 things that you just wrote there and put 5% next to each one of them. Because you're going to find a way to reduce each one of those by 5%. A couple minutes at a time. So instead of looking for huge chunks and how do I save all of this time at once, is save a little bit at a time and take the right actions to do it. So maybe it takes you an hour to go through all your emails every single day. Set it up and say, I want to do it in 55 minutes. And can you become a little bit more efficient the following week or the following month and make it 50? And it's going to vary based off the day, based off the things that are being asked. But if you commit to yourself to try to gain some efficiencies or effectiveness in how you're managing these 3 most time-consuming tasks, it's the 80-20 rule. 20% of your time being dictated through 80% of the time that's attached to it. So if you can take these big chunks of time and just take a little bit, shave a little bit off at a time, you'll be able to do it. Also go back and monitor the amount of time or the number of times that you find yourself multitasking. where your brain's in several different places. I'm not going to tell you to avoid multitasking. I'm going to tell you what can you do to make yourself a little bit more effective in multitasking. Do you find yourself reading emails while you're in the middle of a meeting? I have forced myself to stop doing it. And by doing that, I feel so much more productive and so much engaged in the conversation. I'm having more productive conversations. We're actually getting through many things a little quicker, especially if I'm the host. Try hosting and multitasking. People do. You'll hear Tom's pet peeves as we go through the series. One of Tom's pet peeves is, yeah, I was IMing with Johnny while I was on the call with you, and Johnny doesn't agree with you either. Multitasking. Commit to a start and an end time. And stick to it. Are there going to be times and exceptions to that? Absolutely. But commit to your start and your end times. Block off time for the work to be done. Not just the meeting that leads up to it or follows up, but actually commit to managing and analyzing the reading of the emails and the actual doing of the work. Build that into your time. Build in distraction-free time for yourself. Maybe you say no electronics. Sometimes we forget the creative pieces of ourselves. And we let the phone ring, or our cell phone, or looking at our emails, or our laptop, or whatever it might be. We're constantly in electronic mode. Break out of it and say, today I'm going to give myself a half hour and just read through some things I need to read through, or analyze a report I have to go through, and just pay attention to that and commit to no interruptions. Do you find that there are certain people that are your constant interrupters? They're the ones who are always calling you, always checking in, always instant messaging you, always emailing you, always calling, always walking into your office. Set a non-interruption expectation. And go to those people, again, the 80-20 rule, and say, hey, listen, for the next 2 hours, I'll be off the floor. You can't get a hold of me during this time. Or I have vacation. There's been times where I've told my manager, I'm on vacation, but I'm hanging out at home. Nothing big's going on, call me if you need. And then there's other times where it's, stay away. My phone will be off, you won't be able to get a hold of me. But it's setting the appropriate expectations. Talk to the people who are constantly interrupting you and say, if you can't get I'm going to ask you not to bother me because I'm writing a review. Have a conversation, say, listen, give them the instructions on who they can go see, when they can go see them, how to ensure that their answers are, how their questions can be answered. And when you do all of that, they'll appreciate it. It's respectful. But remember, you're saving the time by making sure that you're not interrupted.